Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Donovan the Smartphone Guy here to do my full review of the Huawei Honor 8. So I've been using this phone for about 10 days now. I picked it up on a great deal from Newegg.com and I got it for $260 with a great package of accessories and things like that. This is a phone that for most of you probably doesn't need any introduction, but for me, it honestly did. The reason why I say that is because when it originally came out, I passed this phone up over and over and over and I chose other phones over this phone to review and just have personally. And the reason for that is for me, I just didn't see how this phone was worth the $400 price point. So now after having it, is it worth $400? It definitely competes with those other $400 phones, but I would say at $350, definitely a buy. At $300, there's 100% sure that this is definitely a buy. And if you can find it for less than $300, definitely pick this up because this phone is fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and move the box off to the side. If you are looking for a video that talks about the specs of this phone, check out my first impressions video. I'll put a card right up here for you to check that out. That has more of the specs. This I want to talk about, in this review, I want to talk about just after using the phone for so long, what do I think about it? So let's talk about, first of all, the hardware. So the hardware itself is beautiful. The phone just looks absolutely amazing. So this is the midnight black version. You can see it collects fingerprints, but normally I have this case on it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and throw that on there. So I have a nice matte case that doesn't show fingerprints, but the phone itself, in terms of feel in the hand, is just fantastic. So it kind of puts aside all of the phones that keep getting bigger and bigger. And this one just feels fantastic in the hand. Very easy to use, one-handed. And it does actually have some one-handed options as well. But in terms of hardware, I would say this phone is definitely a thumbs up easily. Just feels great in the hand. So that's number one. Let's talk about the cameras now. So this has dual cameras on the back, so dual 12 megapixel cameras, and on the front we have an 8 megapixel camera. So I want to talk about the cameras. Low light camera situation is very good, but I do want to give you one thing that I would say is maybe just a slight complaint. I'm going to go out of that camera real quick, and oh shoot, I had it up earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Google Photos. I'm going to just slide through some of my photos real quick. So the camera quality is definitely very good, but I did want to mention one thing that maybe would be just a slight negative. So here's an example real quick. So this is a picture of a display in a art gallery, and this is a dark red. And notice that into trying to brighten it up, it kind of made it a pretty bright red. And I have another example of that, of a poinsettia. So, you know, poinsettias are pretty dark. And so here we go, right? Here's the poinsettia. So this is in that same art gallery. And again, it's a poinsettia. It's a pretty dark flower. And in order to lighten up the screen, it made it a pretty bright red. It's still not bright red, but it's definitely not as dark as it was in real world, at least in my eyes. So it kind of brightened it up, or over brightened it. And it does that with, on occasion, in an attempt to try to brighten up a picture. And let me say this, in terms of low light pictures, this is definitely, in terms of a mid-range budget phone, this one takes the best low light pictures. I mean, I haven't ever had a phone that takes as good of low light photos as this one at this price point. So it definitely beats out the Axon 7. It definitely beats out the OnePlus in terms of photo quality. But there is just that one little issue where it kind of over brightens pictures. The other issue maybe would be with the front facing camera. So in an attempt to try to beautify, it kind of overdoes that sometimes. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're going to use this for selfies. The nice thing is that it does have this, let's see, get off of that. It does have the range of how much you want it to do that. So you can adjust that so that it doesn't do it as much. So that's good, because personally, it kind of overdoes it sometimes in trying to process those photos. So now talking about process, let's transition to the processor. So this is using the Kirin High Silicon Kirin 950, and this thing is very buttery smooth. So I was looking at a Wolverine article here earlier, but in terms of processing power, you are not going to run into any issues with this phone. It can run multiple apps. So let's see how many apps I have running at the moment. Okay, so quite a few. Let's go ahead so this has 4 gigs of RAM. Let's try play music, see if it loads it right. Okay, so it loaded right up to where I had it last. Let's try something older, the Play Store. So it was, okay, updating some apps, so it went right into where it was left off. But processing power on this phone is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so you are not going to run... I personally have not had any hiccups in terms of the processor. It runs as smooth as any phone that I've ever had. And for that reason, I kind of almost say that this phone may be the best iPhone 7 competitor for Android, simply because of the size, the camera quality, the processor. All of that makes it kind of a good competition with the iPhone 7. If you are someone who's typically an iOS user, this is a good option as a replacement, and a much cheaper option, obviously, as well. So the next positive that I want to talk about is the fingerprint sensor, because this thing is very, very fast. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do it 1, 2, 3, and you'll see that it's immediate. So 1, 2, 3, and it's a very fast fingerprint sensor, very, very accurate. In fact, I would say this is probably the fastest and most accurate fingerprint sensor I've had on a phone, and I've had a lot of phones. And the other thing that I really love about it is some of the shortcuts that they have built into it in terms of the flashlight. In terms of the fingerprint sensor. So these are things that you can customize, but let me just go ahead and show you. So one press for me is the flashlight, and that works immediately. There's no issues with that. A double press takes a screenshot for me. Okay, and that's an immediate thing. It doesn't hesitate at all. And a long press will turn on my camera. So again, it works very, very smoothly. That fingerprint sensor for me is just the top. I mean, it's the best. So that's definitely a highlight. The battery on this is only a 3,000 milliamp hour battery. So you would think that maybe it's not going to be that great. Now, I can't really show you exactly what my battery life is like, because I actually just charged it for this video. But typically, I'm getting through a day with no problem. And I would say that I'm getting around 4 to 5 hours of screen on time in general from day-to-day usage. So for me, that's about a day. I'm a very heavy user, so sometimes that won't quite get me through a day. But for most people, I would say the average consumer, it's definitely going to get you through a day. And you'll probably come home with like 30 to 40% battery. So that's good. The display we've already talked about. The software would be probably a negative. As you can see, I am not running stock software. The stock software does not come with this app drawer. So the stock software it's not bad. I do like some of the little tweaks that they have, like with the fingerprint sensor. But in general, I would say you're probably going to want to put a skin on it, because this is like one thing that I don't particularly like. Oh, and that's another. Let's just show one more thing with the fingerprint sensor real quick while I can. And that is, if I just slide my finger across the fingerprint sensor, it drops down that notification shade, which is nice. So kind of adds to the one-handed usability, so you don't have to actually reach up there and pull it down. So that's nice. But you can see here that we have a notification option, and then we have shortcuts. So to get to the shortcuts, you have to first pull down the notification shade and then slide over. And so there's our shortcuts. So this does have NFC, of course, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. It has all of the important things, gyroscope. You can use it with VR, all of that. It has flagship in terms of all of those things. And the screen, in terms of brightness, gets quite bright. So you can see that there. So that's not really an issue either. So where was I at? The software. So the software, would I prefer that they had a more stock feel? Absolutely. But it's definitely software that's not too bad. If I go into the settings, I went through the settings a lot in the first impressions video. So again, check that out. But the software tweaks that they have aren't bad. But, again, it would be nice if they didn't have quite so many tweaks to Android 6.0. Now, with that being said, this phone is going to get Nougat very, very soon. In fact, the P9 already came out with it, I think, today. If you're watching this, I'm recording this on December 7th. The P9 is supposed to be getting that today, the Huawei P9, that is. And the Honor 8 is supposed to be getting it very soon as well. So that's awesome. Definitely, Huawei is keeping up with their software updates for phones like this. So the front-facing camera we've already talked about. Let's talk about what maybe isn't as good with this phone. So if you're picking up the Honor 8, what are the things that I think that could be improved? So number one is the bottom firing speaker. It's not a terrible speaker, but it's also not great. So I have a little bit of metal music here. Let's see how that sounds. I think I might have it cranked up. Let's see. Okay, so it is, sorry. So there's probably not too many viewers that are or metalheads listening to August Burns Red. That's just me. But anyways, with that being said, the speaker it's loud, but it's not the clearest speaker, and of course it's bottom firing. So if you're playing a game, you might cover it up. In general, you typically aren't going to cover it up too bad, but it's not front firing, which of course would be definitely preferable, I think, for just about any Android user. And then the last thing is the available accessories. So there just aren't very many accessories available for this phone in terms of cases, in terms of screen protectors, things like that. There just aren't that many accessories for it. So that is definitely a negative. So, if you're getting an S7, you know that there's just going to be a ton of options out there for accessories. If you're getting phones like the LG G5 or the Moto Z and things like that, there's a ton of accessories out there. But with the Honor 8, there just isn't much out there. So keep that in mind if it's something that you're thinking about picking up. I got this case as a package deal with the phone, but when you go on to Amazon, you're just not going to find too many options out there. So with that being said, if you have any questions about this device, if there's anything that you want to know about it, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments section. I do check it. And I try to respond to those as often as I possibly can. And this is a phone, without a doubt, that I would recommend. There's no question. For me, this is a phone that I could live with as my phone for a year. I mean, that's unheard of for me. I'd never keep a phone for that long. But I would have no problem holding on to this phone for a very long time because it just feels like a great phone. There really aren't any major negatives to it, in my opinion. There are a couple things that I could change, and maybe I would change, but none of them are deal breakers. This is just an absolutely fantastic phone. So pick it up if you get a chance. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. It'll be the Amazon link. Obviously, you can find it in a lot of other places. But with that being said, thanks for watching. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.